Well, when President Joe Biden addressed the American people on the Afghanistan withdrawal last Friday, we were witnessing the death spiral of one of the most calamitous US administrations of modern times. Those are the words of our next guest, who was recently named one of the 50 most influential Britons in the United States by the London Daily Telegraph. His name is Nyle Gardiner, and he is the director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom. Nyle, welcome to Outsiders. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on the show today.
Well, Nyle, I have to admit you had me at Margaret Thatcher. Well done. Before we get stuck into the disastrous Biden administration, you worked with Margaret Thatcher in her later years. Briefly, what was she like, and what would she have made of Joe Biden other than mincemeat?
Well, Margaret Thatcher was an absolutely incredible leader. She was a conviction politician who played a very key role in leading the free world. And she would have been absolutely appalled, of course, by the developments that we're seeing in Afghanistan. She would have been horrified, actually, by Joe Biden's clueless lack of leadership here. She would have been absolutely appalled by what we're seeing at the moment in Kabul. And what we are seeing in Afghanistan, of course, is absolutely shameful. And my former boss, Margaret Thatcher, would have been absolutely appalled by what we're seeing. And she would have strongly condemned, I think, the actions of US President Joe Biden. Biden is the antithesis of Ronald Reagan. He is someone who is trashing the US-UK special relationship. And Margaret Thatcher would have viewed Joe Biden as an incredibly weak-kneed, cowardly leader who has abandoned the people of Afghanistan, but also, of course, who has abandoned the NATO alliance, the transatlantic alliance, and is doing immense damage, I think, to America's standing on the international stage. So she would have been absolutely horrified, I think, by the developments that we're seeing unfolding at the moment in Afghanistan.
James.
I want to ask you about Joe Biden and Parliament right now, and particularly one of the phrases that I like to use an awful lot around here is, but at least there's no mean tweets. Now, I was just thinking back to 2016 when the British Parliament condemned Donald Trump when he was running for president. In 2017, they condemned him again. Now they've got Joe Biden. Everybody got their wish and got rid of Trump, and now they've voted to condemn Joe Biden. How low has Joe Biden taken the special relationship between the UK and the US here, and what can be done, if anything, to restore it?
Well, that's a great question. I do think the special relation at the moment is at its lowest point since the Suez Crisis of 1956. And this is Joe Biden's doing. And as you mentioned, the House of Commons condemned President Biden's handling of the Afghanistan situation just a few days ago. And MPs were queuing up, actually, to condemn Joe Biden's lack of leadership. And it should be noted with regard to President Trump, although certainly many on the left in the United Kingdom didn't like President Trump, but he was strongly, I think, supported by a lot of Brexiteers in Britain. And so I think parliamentary opinion was very divided over Donald Trump, whereas over Joe Biden, I think there's unanimous condemnation of Biden's actions here. And it's not just coming from the Conservative Party, it's also coming from the Labour Party and the Liberals as well. And so you won't find many British MPs who are actually supporting Joe Biden at this time. In fact, I think that no US president in modern times has been more attacked and criticised by British lawmakers than Joe Biden. I mean, Biden is viewed as an absolutely clueless leader. And I think the British are hugely unimpressed by Biden's actions.
Daisy.
Well, now, Margaret Thatcher famously said that if you set out to be liked, you would be prepared to compromise on anything at any time and you would achieve nothing, which is a fantastic quote. Do you think Joe Biden could perhaps learn from Margaret Thatcher, given how fervently he wanted to be liked to get out of Afghanistan quickly?
Well, I think that, certainly, Joe Biden's a million miles away from Margaret Thatcher and Margaret Thatcher's character, really. And Joe Biden really is the absolute opposite of a leader like Margaret Thatcher, who is a tremendously courageous figure of tremendous principle. And I do think that, as you point out, Joe Biden made a tremendous miscalculation here. He thought that it would be hugely popular to withdraw from Afghanistan at a very speedy rate. And of course, this is what the far left of his own Democratic Party wanted. And so Biden listened to those voices. Now, if you look at the latest opinion polls, just 25% of Americans support actually Biden's handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal, 60% oppose it. And Biden is sinking very rapidly in the overall polls. In fact, I think he's becoming one of the most unpopular US presidents of modern times. And so, Biden thought this would be a popular move, throwing the Afghan people to the wolves, deserting Afghanistan, deserting the NATO alliance. But actually, the American people do not like to be humiliated. We've seen the humiliation of the US superpower on the world stage. This is Joe Biden's responsibility. He owns this tremendous disaster, this calamity. This is Biden's leadership here. And Biden really has bowed down to the far left wing of the Democratic Party, who now call the shots. And it's an absolute disgrace. It will take many years, perhaps decades, for the United States to recover once this calamity is over.
Now, Nile, I want to switch to Boris Johnson. We've mentioned Margaret Thatcher. It often fills me with horror that Boris Johnson is the supposedly heir to the Conservative Party. When you see things like his plans on climate change and reaching net zero emissions, basically this socialist fantasy of basically impoverishing people and forcing them to pay $20,000 for heat pumps or whatever else madness has come along this week. Where do you see, can you explain the enigma of Boris Johnson to us? Because on the one hand, he got Brexit done, terrific. On the other hand, he seems to be greener than the greenest of greens.
Yeah, it's an interesting question there, because after all, Boris Johnson is without a doubt the most powerful conservative leader in the world now. And with the decline of American leadership and the disaster that is the Biden presidency, I think that Britain's role on the international stage will be significantly elevated and even more important, actually, in the next few years. And so Boris Johnson's a very important figure. As you point out, I think that there is a lot to be, unhappy about with regard to the green agenda of the British government, and that's very unpopular with a lot of British conservatives as well. There's also a lot of criticism over Boris Johnson over the big government, heavy spending style of the government, especially since the pandemic began. On the other hand, of course, I think it has to be recognised, as you mentioned, Boris Johnson delivered Brexit. Britain is doing very well economically. I think Brexit will be a great success story. This is also a government that is standing up to the woke far left agenda that's being exported from the United States at this stage, and the British government's doing a lot of good work on that front. You have some tremendous figures like Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, very strong Thatcherite conservatives. You have a lot of very good ministers in this government. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of areas where the Conservative government can be criticised, especially on its environmental agenda, which is going to be hugely costly for the British economy if implemented. And I can't see how this is popular with the British people, especially with British Conservative voters. And I do hope that Boris Johnson reverses course on a lot of this.
James.
Niall, can you tell us tell us here in Australia how people in Britain, not just in Parliament, but the ordinary man on the street and woman on the street is feeling about what's just gone down? I mean, history rhymes imperfectly, but this idea of an isolationist United States while other threats are on the rise does kind of have some, pregnancy in historical echoes and things like that. What are people out there thinking in Britain? Are they feeling like Britain is now more isolated with a rising Russia, a declining United States? And do we feel like we've just been here before?
I think, opinion in Britain is very mixed on this. I mean, there are certainly some who think the special relationship is over. There are others who will say, and I think rightly so, that the special relationship will recover post-Biden. And once the Biden administration goes, and if you have a strong, robust, conservative administration in Washington, then you'll see the special relationship being rebuilt. And I think there are many good conservative leaders in the United States who could possibly take over from this absolutely awful Biden presidency. So I'm hopeful about the long term, but we're going to be looking at 3.5 further years of sharp American decline. And I think this is also a moment when Brexit Britain has to step up to the plate and assert stronger leadership on the world stage, because it won't be coming from Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden is an absolutely weak-kneed figure who simply cannot lead the free world. And I think that Britain in the Brexit era can be a resurgent world power, but it's got to have the vision and the confidence to do so. It's got to have the right economic policies as well to do so. And Britain has to reject any kind of big government style socialist thinking, and instead support free market policies. Also support a big increase in defence spending, which is necessary. And I do believe that the US-UK special relationship will recover, but it's going to take some time. And it's only going to happen once the awful Biden presidency has left office. I mean, this is the most left-wing US presidency in American history here. And Joe Biden is willingly going along with the far left's terrible agenda. And that is extremely dangerous for the United States. It's extremely dangerous for the entire free world as well.
Now, Nyle, you mentioned Boris Johnson and Britain stepping up onto the world stage. Poor old Margaret Thatcher must be spinning in her grave so much she must be dizzy. But one of the areas which Britain didn't appear, and correct me if I'm wrong, to step up was over Hong Kong. Why was, Maggie would have just been horrified by the way China has broken the treaty, betrayed the deal done on Hong Kong. Why was Britain so quiet and acquiescent?
Well, I think, with regard to Hong Kong, certainly, I think that, the stance of the West could have and should have been even stronger. And certainly if Margaret Thatcher, was the Prime Minister today, she would be standing up to Beijing. And I think that, there has been far too much appeasement of China by the major Western democracies over the past few decades. And you've seen that, of course, in a major way with the Biden administration. The European Union has absolutely perfected the art of appeasement towards China. I think in the UK it's a mixed picture. I do think that Boris Johnson has to be a lot tougher towards Beijing. There are many Conservative MPs, such as Ian Duncan-Smith, for example, the former leader of the Conservative Party, who are pressing for a far tougher line over Hong Kong. And I think that in some respects, Britain has done, taken some good steps here. So, for example, the UK has offered a safe haven to potentially 2 to 3 million Hong Kong citizens, actually, who have the right of abode in the United Kingdom. So Britain has stepped forward then. But you do have to stand up to Chinese aggression wherever it is. And at the moment, I have to say that the West is not being tough enough against China, and especially the United States is failing to lead. I mean, the Biden administration's policy towards Beijing is all over the place, actually, and it really is a policy overall of appeasement and confusion. And of course, the European Union is even worse, and that leaves us with Britain. I think that Boris Johnson has to step up to the plate. He has to be a tougher leader against Beijing. We also have to see, of course, the rebuilding of British military power. If you're going to stand up to China, you have to have the military capability to do so. But Britain has suffered through a lot of defence cuts over the course of the last 20, 30 years. Those have to be reversed. And we have to see Britain once again acting like a truly global world power.
Hear, hear, Nyle Gardiner, thanks so much for talking to us on Outsiders, and so jealous that you worked with Margaret Thatcher. What a lucky man. Thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. Take care.
Thank you very much.